Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to another Kung Fu Talk, where we're gonna have a Kung Fu chat today, right? Um, Thank you very much for watching this show. Thank you very much for following us on this social media platform. Hope you guys are gonna have a good time. We're gonna have a good chat today, talking about martial arts in general. I mean, Kung Fu, to be more specific. And I'd like to ask you to please like, subscribe, comment. Make sure that you go and share your thoughts. What do you think about the show? Who you would like us to bring here in our next episode? We have it open doors, so for everybody to has knowledge and who has good character to be part of this show, so we can all chat a little bit and share martial arts experience, of course. This show is sponsored by Freelon Design Hub, which is a martial arts printing design. So if you like martial arts and you like, graphic tees, graphic hoodies, mugs, mouse pad, mats, there's many different things customized. So make sure that you follow the page. There's many different styles, such as Kung Fu, Hapkido, Taekwondo, Muay Thai, Judo, Shuai Jiao. You can go ahead and purchase the products. The links are going to be under this description. And yeah, so I hope you guys enjoy. So it's going to be on Amazon, Redbubble, and T Public and Etsy. So make sure that you check it out. There's hundreds of designs over there, so you can check it out in the store. Another thing, so this show will be published on YouTube and Spotify. Make sure that also you check our channel on Spotify. So if you prefer to listen instead of watching, but if you're listening and you want to have access to our guests' information, such as books or private sessions or online sessions, make sure that you go on our channel on YouTube and then check it out. Okay. So today I have here Sifu Daniel Schultz. Good morning. How are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderfully. Thank you for having me on.
Amazing. That's really nice. We had a little bit of chat before. It's nice that, casually we met through Sifu Neil. Great episode, my favorite episode. A lot of insight. If you guys haven't checked, make sure that you go there and you check the last episode. That was a boom, right? And yeah, and then I check out your channel. Love your content. Love what you do. Love your book. Make sure I'm gonna also get some of your book next time, so I can also promote in our channel. Make sure you guys check. The link's gonna be in the description, okay, guys? And I want to start, Sifu Daniel, asking you, so you could please share about your martial arts journey. How did you start into martial arts?
So my martial arts journey didn't start in the most traditional sense. It was started with like a karate studio when I was around 6 years old. And the idea was that I was gaming all the time, doing video games, and my parents were like, "You need to do something." so they gave me an ultimatum. I could either do ballet with my sister, or I could do this martial arts. So obviously, I did ballet, and as you can see here today, I'm a martial artist. So I started karate. I did that for about 5 to 6 years, and then after that, I kept up the practice a little bit, but I didn't get super serious until around high school, around 2008, when I got into the Chinese martial arts through a teacher locally here. And then from there, I went from teacher to teacher, kind of looking for more and more tradition and drunken boxing, which is eventually what I'd be finding my current teacher, Sifu Daniel Schultz, through. But I had several schools to go through before I got to there, where I learned Shaolin Kung Fu, Yang Style Tai Chi Chuan, Hung Gar, and some various other tidbits and such from seminars I would get. And then eventually I met Neil Ripsky, who is my current teacher and the one whose curriculum I teach. And I met him through his Drunken Boxing online course, where you know, everybody has the same story when they try to learn drunken boxing. They saw Jackie Chan and they're like, oh, I need to learn that. So,
Yeah.
I went and looked online for anything I could. And at the time, Sifu Daniel Schultz had like a couple videos, not too much, just like some stepping form, some lotus stepping and some stuff. So I was looking at his stuff and I was looking at some other things. And then he started posting more and more. And then eventually he had an online course. So I joined up with that and learned all that I could. And this was all happening while I was still under my Shaolin and Hung Gar teacher. And eventually I decided, okay, I'm going to go meet this guy in person. So I flew out to Canada and started learning from him in person. And we started doing the full-time online course, or not online, but full-time in-person course, which is ridiculous and consists of 5 days a week, 8-hour days of training, plus a quota that you have to achieve before you even start training. And I believe that one of his students measured the amount of hours that you put in, and they measured the amount of hours that an average person puts into work throughout the year. So the average person comes to a dojo maybe once or twice a week for 2 or 3 hours. So 1 month of the full-time training was about equal to 1 year of the average person's training hours, at least. So we got to spend time in the hyperbolic time chamber for all the Dragon Ball Z fans out there. And so yeah, my relationship with Sifu Daniel has just been, I go out there, I go live with him, and then I train, and then I come back, and then I go out there, I live with him, I train, I come back, and until he started telling me, okay, you need to teach. And I'm like, okay, I need to teach. And so now I have a school of my own, and I have students and all that good stuff.
That's great. It's beautiful, this perception of martial arts, how people get through this path in a different ways. For example, your way was a little bit similar from my way. When I first started was through video games and also Bruce Lee movies. And what I want to ask you, what would you say? I want to choose, the path of martial arts. You first try and then you liked it, karate, and then you went to some other different Chinese martial arts system until you find what is more suitable for you as your path of, the Drunken Fist. What actually drew you into what you are right now, your passion, like what exactly caught your attention from all the tryings and then making you choose this path?
Hmm. That's kind of something that evolved over time, because what I hear a lot with stories is that there's suddenly like a moment where everything changed. But for me, it's never been like that. For me, it's just slow changes over time. So at first, it was cool because movies, and I wanted to be as close to an anime character as I could. So, and uh, and then over time, I started to appreciate the health aspects of it, the martial arts part of it. I started to understand and appreciate the culture and tradition. And so it evolved into kind of like I want to keep this thing going because it's bringing me a lot of joy. So I want to bring other people a lot of joy in the same way. And then that kind of evolved further and further until now it's just something I want to do just because I want to do it. Like all these other things that might make me sound noble, like I want to preserve the arts. Now it's more selfish, I guess. I just like it, so I'm doing it. And if I can help people while I do it, that's great, right?
Exactly, because in a sense, you always impact positive in a positive way other people's life. As a Sifu News explained the other episode, how his Sifu helped him when he was in struggling in life, and now he taught you and some other students as well. So, and I think it's beautiful how we have this good heart of sense of teaching, and sending wisdom through martial arts, through other people, transferring energy, and in a sense where we can impact positively other people's. A lot of people, they get the ego only thinking about the martial arts is just a system of fighting, but I would say martial arts is way more than just fighting, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's so much more. It's not only fighting, but it's health art. It's a philosophy system. it's culture, it's so much. And to me, it's a lifestyle now.
Mhm.
If you were to take kung fu out of me, I would not be a person. I don't think anymore. So much of my life has been based around that, and just the way I move, the way I act. It's very much because of kung fu. I dived a lot into philosophical systems, even outside of the Chinese martial arts. I've studied Buddhism and Taoism to a degree. I've also been studying the Greek philosophical systems like cynicism and Socratic dialogue, because it's just been interesting to me. But a lot of like I was always like an introverted kid, social anxiety, all that good stuff. But the philosophical systems that evolved from my Chinese martial arts practice has really changed how I interact on a daily basis. I'm much more okay talking to people, even if I do like feel like a little bit of jitters sometimes when I'm meeting new people. I
Mhm.
I'm able to get out of my shell more or less. It changed me as a person. I wouldn't be able to talk on this podcast right now if it weren't for
Mhm.
that.
Exactly. It's a transformation, it's a life transformation. And normally, what I say is kung fu is a lifestyle. Like you cannot like when you find your path, regardless which martial arts style. I try to interview many people from different systems and trying to understand what they're thinking about their systems and how deep they understand their system. Not through the movements itself, because sometimes the movements, and I love how you explain deep into definitions of characters. That's exactly how I spoke with Sifu New the other day. He was explaining about the black fist, the black tiger stealing the heart. And then I saw a video of you explaining the tiger gets the lamb, and the tiger gets the crouches, or attacks the wolf, something like that. And it's nice because you try to understand the art itself, right? But when you try to understand yourself and your purpose in this life through the martial arts, which is a path, and many people, they get confused martial arts and religion. I think both things walk together, but I would say that one thing shouldn't conflict to each other. So I've heard many different stories, but it's nice how as I was talking about a lifestyle, how that thing that we call martial arts system, regardless if it's karate, kung fu, muay thai, normally traditional martial arts get more into this aspect of philosophy and culture, which helps you to understand your living being, or how you're going to pursue things in life, and how that system you're going to resemble and is going to shape through your personal life, if you know what I'm saying. Right, I don't see that much, maybe because I don't have much contact with people with modern martial arts such as MMA, jiu-jitsu, and Muay Thai. Normally when I see they're great fighters, but how much do they understand? No offense, no disrespect about the system, because I know there's many different martial artists, great martial artists are out there. But maybe people just normally just think about just punching, knee strikes, elbow strikes, and that's it. And then when you get into the aspect of body motion, and many of them doesn't even know the body anatomy, they just know the movements itself. And that's something that I get very, very, very into when I study the system, understanding how my body works through the stretching, through the punch, and I see that that's a really beautiful art.
Absolutely. The way I see it, like with the modern martial arts, and not to knock anything in modern martial arts, it's great. And I've practiced with some people and taught some seminars at a MMA school with my teacher. And it's great. It's great physical activity, and they get active and all that stuff. But that's what I kind of think modern martial arts is more focused on. Is it's more focused on the physical fitness aspect and the fighting aspect, because that's it's nothing that's needing to be passed on necessarily, because it's not the traditional arts. It's more of, okay, I want to have fun doing this thing. I want to fight. I want to get fit. But the traditional arts grew up in a different time frame. The modern martial arts are growing up in a time frame where the gun is the thing to go to if you need self defense, and anything else other than that is if you need it. But traditional martial arts grew up in a time when there wasn't guns, or there was at least very primitive level guns, where your martial arts and spears were still effective enough. It was during a time where your martial arts were whether you lived and died going to grocery store, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it was very much like primitive. I'm gonna rip out your groin and rip out your throat, and no sport about it. I'm gonna do what I can to survive, and because this is my way of surviving, my way to get home, it's also my way of surviving to old age. I need to be able to do the same things in my 20s as I do in my 70s, because if I tire out, then when I go to the grocery store,
Mm-hmm.
somebody's going to get me and I'm not going to be able to do anything about it. So it needs to develop in a way that it wasn't just for the young fighter, but also for the aged fighter. And then as you age, right, you tend to chill out a lot more, or at least for some of us, we do.
Mm-hmm.
When you're young, it's like, okay, I want to fight. Yeah, I want to scrap and mix things up. And as you age, it's like, man, getting punched in the face sucks. I don't want to get punched in the face. I'd rather just chill and, chill with my buddies and grab a drink or something. And you start to see life differently because you've experienced a lot more. So philosophical connotations kind of interbreed with the martial arts just because you've lived through stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
I hope I'm making sense, but
No, absolutely, because when we talk about the comparison between modern and tradition, we as you say, right, like, so we live it in a age where, in a time where modern martial arts, they are built and they're shaped as a sport, and that's many people don't understand that. So for example, if you are a guy that it's very good maybe with the Glock or a shotgun, and then okay, now I'm gonna give you an arrow and bow and you're gonna have to shoot with that shit, like, so you go like, what am I gonna supposed to do with this? Okay, I still know how to shoot. Maybe it can be, the aiming position, it might be a little bit similar for people who does that thing kind of thing. But now when I take half of your tools and put you in a place where, okay, just figure it out what you have to do. And I'm not saying that, okay, so as a martial artist you should be knowing what you're doing, of course. And but what I'm trying to say is, so for example, we got a traditional system when my main point is dismantle and to break you down in pieces, where my first thought as a self-defense practitioner, I would think, I'm gonna first go to your eyeballs, to your growing, or maybe, to rip up your throat. But guess what? If I go to a competition, I have to be respectfully. I'm not gonna do that. And now my eye jab or my buji or whatever you want to call it, depending your art, I cannot use that. It has to be a jab. Okay, so have to adaptability, right? So now I
yeah.
cannot punch your throat and I cannot punch your groin. So part of my kicking system, I have to adapt again. Adaptability is important, but doesn't mean that when it comes to adaptability, things does not work. And that's unfortunately what a lot of people, they don't understand, right? So if I get into a point, like for example, um, normally traditional martial arts systems such as kung fu, you have a little bit of grappling. We don't know any ground. Not that we don't know. We have to experiment and maybe develop some ground system. Not every single system, such as for example Wing Chun. As far as I'm concerned, I never heard anything about ground system into Wing Chun or into some other Hung Gar or Choli Fa. So now I put you in a competition where you have to fight against a jiu-jitsu guy and you have to be on the floor. So is that fair? You know what I'm saying? Like maybe you can survive, maybe you can help, but fighting against something that has been that an art that has been built and shaped through that specifically combination competition. Now, if you put me the guy in the street, I'm 100% sure. First thing I'm gonna jump, I'm gonna try to jump into his throat, into his eye, and take his eyeballs. If you know what I'm saying, And if I'm talking about the streetwise, and that's why there's a lot of we got into a different route at the beginning of our conversation through what we were expecting. But I think that's a good thing that we can maybe possibly think about it. When we see for example, just I don't want to extend, just give a conclusion. A Jeet Kune Do, my Sifu, always tell us that Jeet Kune Do is very applicable for self-defense aspect. When you go to kickboxing or some that competition, of course you have to adapt, but it doesn't mean that it's not effective. You just have to shape it, maybe change the style a little bit so it may fit to a different purpose.
Absolutely. And you can kind of see that in the Chinese martial arts as well. A lot of the different systems have different focuses. Like one might be more like Shui Jiao wrestling, one might be more oriented to striking at a distance, right? If you look at like Western boxing, they have, of course, this is overgeneralization, but they have like three main ways that you kind of look at it. Like slugger, every hit's going to be really hard and just going to be nights out, right? And then there's the outboxer, the person who kind of dances to the side, getting distance on them, trying to wear their opponent out. And then there's the swarmer who's just trying to eat up that space. It's the same kind of thing with Chinese martial arts. There's your Tai Chi, which is really good at throwing people around, it's stand-up wrestling and such. There's your Xingyi Chuan and Xingyi Liuhe, which is just smashing straight through. There's your Baguozhang, which is weaving towards the sides. And they even have some ground boxing stuff. There's like Di Tong and a dog boxing and monkey boxing, and some other systems have elements of ground boxing. But though most of those elements are, I fell on the ground, I need to get back up. How do I get back up? And if I compare and contrast like BJJ to monkey boxing, they're pretty similar, though they're like a little bit different in their mindsets. Where BJJ like wants to take you to the ground and just roll around with you. Monkey boxing is willing to go to the ground, but it's more like I want to get on top of you and then finish you off. I don't want to roll on the ground with you. I'll roll, but I'm going to be on top and stand up and beat you down, right? It's just different mindsets. The kind of thing is like if you think about ancient war, if you're on the ground too long with a guy, his friends are coming to stabbing you with spears. So you need to always think about the other people who are coming, which is not something that you necessarily have to think about with like one-on-one sport boxing, but just different time, different emphasis. But it's absolutely will roll around on the ground with you and just to a different end. Actually, one of my Kung Fu brothers decided to go and practice at a BJJ club, and he secretly used his monkey boxing and got a black belt, I think, in 6 months.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it worked. It worked.
That's impressive. Yeah. So every martial arts, it connects. So you have, even into, there's a huge debate into Sanda and traditional Kung Fu. You see elements into Sanda, even though my personal opinion, I feel that Sanda is a different system. But there's people that implement it into their traditional system, which is fine, and then I respected that. I think it's beautiful that we can have different opinions through different topics. But coming now to the point where we talk about specifically systems, right? You've trained a variety of with some masters, including internal and external styles. What are some of the key lessons or philosophies that have stuck with you from each teacher? For example, you have Sifu Neil, great guy with a lot of wisdom. You have your Hongar, your Shaolin. So what do you think are some main points that you could maybe touch bases or mention in our podcast for a public?
Sure. So I'll try to go through a variety of them, and there's plenty to go through. So my Hongar and Shaolin Yang style Tai Chi teacher, not they're all the same system, Shaolin and Yang style Tai Chi, but he taught me a lot of tradition, and I had done Kung Fu before him, but I didn't really know a lot about the tradition, a lot about the culture, and he kind of introduced me into that. And I think through understanding the culture, I started to understand more about the mindset, and it could continue to evolve under teachers after that as well. Just understanding the mindset of the culture helps you understand the mindset of why these things were created and how they were created and all that. So I got into a lot of the tradition and culture, and then he also really gave me solid basics to work with. My Shifu Neil Ripsky, my current teacher, always wanted to personally thank my teacher in Hongar, Sifu Steve Kleppy, for giving me a solid basis to work with, because it was, as my teacher described it, easy for him to put in the juice of the systems that he wanted to give me, because I already had the basics to work with. I already had all the shapes. And moving on from that, there's also Master Wei Chung Lin from Skokie, Illinois. He's passed on right now, but while he was still around, he was my first introduction to high-level internal martial arts. And he was the one who introduced me to the idea that an old man can throw around hundreds of pounds of worth of people like it's nothing. And, you know, I felt it myself. I asked him after the seminar that I met him, I'm like, okay, can I touch you? Can I feel what this is like? And the first thing he says is he turns to his disciple, is like, this guy wants to go for a ride. So he takes me to the back room where he's got these foot-thick wall mats and starts chucking me into the wall mats. And so this really got me to experience that kind of power, which really got me excited about learning more. And then as I got to meet Sifu Daniel Schultz, everything kind of just fell into place after that, because I had all these different experiences, but I didn't have quite the full context to put them all together yet. But this really helped me to weave everything together. He showed me how to get high-level internal skills. He showed me why the traditions and culture mattered, and he showed me like why all these shapes are shaped the way they are, even as odd as they may look at times. The details, everything. It was like I had the body of a car, and he just put gasoline in it, and it just started taking off from there, which is why I ended up getting skills a lot faster through him, because I already had that body of the car to work with. And so he's taught me a lot of things over the years, and probably the most important, which is the one that I always denied until it actually happened, is the idea that you learn more from teaching than you do from your teacher, which I was like, Sifu Neil, with all due respect, and I do believe your opinion is valid, you've taught me so much, and I don't think I could ever like replicate that just on my own through teaching. And then he's like, okay, you're going to start teaching now. And so I got a school together. I had students and all that. And it turns out he was right. Not to say that his teachings were insufficient, but he was right. You learn a lot more through teaching, because not only are you learning methods, but you're going back through the methods now with a different mindset. So before, when you learn your horse stance, when you learn your black tiger steals a heart punch, when you learn your front kicks, you had the beginner's mindset because you were a beginner at the time you learned it. And then you might go over it during an intermediate stage of your training to kind of put more mechanics into it. But then like when you start teaching, you're now put in the mindset of the advanced practitioner or the teacher. And then you also have to put it into simple terms for your student because they're beginners. And so as you're teaching it to them and trying to teach it in different ways, because not everybody picks up on the same analogies, because like one person might be a mechanic, one person might be an artist. And so if you teach the artist through mechanic analogies, they might not quite get it. But if you teach them through art analogies, they might understand. So as you continually reevaluate the information that you're teaching them under different lenses, it gives you more insight into them yourself. And then as you're teaching them, it's like, this is your horse stance. And then you realize yourself, oh, wait, I didn't think about this about the horse stance before. This is kind of this is a different aspect, another way of looking at it. So it's looking at your basics through the lens of someone who's already has experience. And through that, you improve those basics. And as your basics improve, everything else improves, because it's that solid foundation that you're building off of. So yeah, it's, as much as I begrudgingly accepted it, it was true. It was probably one of the most effective and important lessons that he gave me. Just through teaching, I learned so much. I really appreciate my school and my students.
When it's very interesting because as you mentioned, how many times I thought that I thought that I understood maybe a stance, maybe a technique, maybe a movement, and then when it came up to a teaching point, I was in class many times that happened, and then I teach something. I was like, wait a minute, this actually also fits for so many things. So you see a universe of wisdom through just one simple technique sometimes. And the martial arts evolves in the different times of your life. For example, now as you mentioned, like you're super young, and we can do so many things with our body, and then when the age comes and things we have to adapt. It doesn't mean that we does not become effective as you mentioned, but we have to adapt our martial arts in a different way. Like I remember practicing Shuai Jiao with Grandmaster Daniel Wang. He's a very old, respectfully old Chinese man, and when the way he walks, he's super chill, like always like this. And then one day he was showing a throw. It was so funny because he got this kid. He was like, "Is it okay if I throw it this way?" And the kid was like, "Yeah, that's fine." Boom! I was like, he was like, and then the kid was like, "Oh my god!" And it was like, "Wow, how can he does it?" It's just years of experience. And then when you master something, when you understand, not mastering, because I don't believe in the word mastering, but when you are in the sense of almost mastering, when you're in a high level of wisdom, understanding the technique and what you're teaching, your hands become powerful, and your mind is more powerful, even though that your body is still in adaptation of aging, but yeah, it's impressive, this process. And martial arts, I believe it helps us to understand the process, right?
Absolutely. And that's kind of what like internal I kind of summarize it as.
Mhm.
I'm going to get older. I want to be effective at what I do still, right? So I need to be more clever and more strategic about how I do things. I can't just rely on overpowering or outspeeding somebody.
Mhm.
So I have to be able to make up for that. What I lack in speed when I age, I need to make up with positioning and timing. What I lack in power, well, what I lack in strength, I'll make up for with efficient power. And internal kind of gets into that. It works into the mechanics of the body and how you adjust the biomechanics of your structure to get the most efficient force without expending so much energy. So that's how you get people like Master Lin and with George Shu, who I also met, just have this high level internal stuff going on, and they're aged, and they throw you around. They throw some. Master Lin had a student who was like around 300 pounds and throwing him into the wall mats like it was
Wow.
nothing. And I'm like, whoa, I want whatever you got going on.
Right.
But it's like it's just
That's
efficiently using the bodies in a way that won't age. Because if I rely on say like my shoulder muscle and I use 100% of its strength every time I punch, right? One, it's just one muscle, so it's gonna weaken over time, and I'm relying 100% on that muscle. But if I distribute, say 1% across my entire musculature, right? It's efficient. None of my muscles are gonna tire out from punching, but I'm gonna get a lot more force because all the muscles are working together, right? And not just one small muscle, but lots of big muscles integrated together.
absolutely. Going back a little bit regarding, different systems, you've traveled through many different places. I saw in your bio. So Canada, Israel, Thailand for martial arts. Can you share some of the most memorable experiences, sorry, from those trips?
Sure. So starting in Canada, that's like kind of where I began my world traveling. It was my first time out of the States. And so that was big and new and also very exciting. Got to see British Columbia for the first time, such a beautiful sight. And that's when I started doing the full-time training. So it was my first time living as close to a monk as I could have at the time, right? Where it's just I don't have to do about anything about work. I'm just here. I'm doing martial arts. I'm enjoying the sight of the mountains, and that's that. And as I continued, we eventually he moved to Edmonton, Alberta, which is a little bit more flat, more city, but still great training. At that time, I was living with him during the training. I just live in one of his spare rooms, and it was very much like the casual, like get out in the living room. All right, do your forms, and then I'll yell at you at some point. So, and I remember I think it was my third time in Canada that we were doing like the systems proper, because the first time I went, I wanted to learn Drunken Boxing. The second time I went, I wanted to learn Chen Tai Chi and Chung Bagua. And the third time, I'm like, okay, I'm fully sold. I want to learn this Xing Little Hill thing you got, but do me the curriculum. Do everything. I want your curriculum. Give it to me. And so we were going through the system proper. And at some point during Blue Sash, you have to sit in what's called floating tiger stance for a 30-minute time period on both sides. And a floating tiger, I don't think I could show you with the camera angle here, but it's like halfway point between a bow stance and a horse stance. And there's like a particular way that you twist and wrap the qua in order to gain power. And you have to sit in there for 30 minutes on each side. And at the time, I had injured my ankle on my right side, I believe. And so on one side, I was okay. And I was like building up the time that I could sit. And then the other time I had, on the other side, I could only sit for about a third of the time as the other side. But I remember just one day, like, he's like, oh, okay, sit in your stance. I'm like, okay. And he goes and watches Seinfeld. And I'm like, okay. So while I'm sitting in the stance, like I think I was working up to, I was worked up to 15 minutes on one side and 5 minutes on the injured side at that time. And when I got to 15 minutes on the one side, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to go for it. I'm just going to sit here for 30 minutes. And at the time I thought it was only 30 minutes on the one side. That's the where you get to go past that level, right? But no, I learned after that it was both sides. So I sat there for the 30 minutes. I'm like, I did it. I sat for 30 minutes. It's like, okay, now other side. And though it did hurt my ankle, I sat there for that 30 minutes. And after I sat there for that 30 minutes, I slowly stood up because my legs were shaking. And I started walking over. And I saw Shifu look to me. He gestures towards the couch. Sit. Lunch. Seinfeld. And that was kind of my reward. So that was a very, very interesting, but also very fun and personal experience. And then moving on to outside of that, Thailand, because I went to Canada 4 times. The last time I was celebrating the grand opening of the school that my teacher was trying to open up at the time. And we were originally going to go to a Thailand trip together with me, my Kung Fu brothers, sisters, and my teacher. But because the grand opening happened at around the same time, my teacher wanted to focus on that. So I decided that I was going to also go to Thailand at right afterwards, where my Kung Fu brother, Sammy, he also went there with me. So it became a time of like my first time off of the continent, which was very exciting. The first time in a very, very different culture, right? Asian culture. And it was just me and my Kung Fu brother just kind of hanging out, doing things. We'd train in the mornings, and then we'd go around town for a little bit and then hide during noon because that's when you die from the sun. And then we'd come out during evening time for the nightlife, and that was our routine. And my Kung Fu brother Sammy, he's known for his Drunken Boxing and his Xing Yi Quan. So that was when he helped me to refine my own craft. And it was just a lot of fun getting to deal with him, because even though he learned from my teacher, he has a different vibe, different energy to him, which is really what my teacher says is kind of the strength of the Ma family Kung Fu style, because it's of the way it's set up, right? There's the different systems that are all combined as one system, like all the different animal systems, Drunken Boxing, the Tai Chi Tren and Baguozhang, all those things, they're all kind of combined into one. And it's like you become shadows of those different systems. Much like Baguozhang goes through constant systems of change, the Ma family would do the same. But like, I turn one way, I'm tiger, and then you counter, I might change to mantis, and then I might become drunk. It's just this constant ebb and flow of change between the systems. But because of the way it's set up, you kind of tend to vibe with some systems more than others. For me, it was Drunken Boxing. For Riel, it was Mantis, and we all had our kind of specializations. And with each system, they also had specializations within these skill sets. So matches is good at plucking and dragging people off their route. Drunken boxing is very good for getting people off the route in a different way, just kind of weaving around punches and knocking into them in order to disrupt their structure and then throw them on the ground and such. And then Shinny Lilith is great for drilling holes through people, and Tai Chi Chuan is good for dispelling force. And so everybody kind of had their skill sets, and because they had the things that they vibed with, like if someone is more like Tiger, if someone's more like Drunken, their kung fu is kind of shaped that way. So even if they're doing Tiger, they're doing Tiger their way. You know what I mean? So it's like you can see that we're all different in our vibes, but you can also tell that we're all family. That's kind of the strength of the system. We have our different perspectives, different vibes, but we're all family at the end of the day. So I got to experience that with my Kung Fu brother. And then in Israel was the time when I started teaching around that time. So after the grand opening and after Thailand, I started opening up a school, but I didn't have like anything big at that time. But Israel, the deal was, hey, you come with me to Israel, you help me teach my full-time students there, and you can come for free. I'm like, heck yeah, free Kung Fu. I just had to get there, is all. So that was like my time of like really starting to get invested in this teaching thing. And so it was a different experience being at full-time, not only learning, but also teaching, where I started to get to understand that whole aspect of you learn more teaching than you do from learning and all that stuff. And I started, at that time, I was learning kind of the ends of the curriculums, some of the more obscure things, some things that weren't officially in the curriculum, or things that weren't like specified, because we have like the diagram, the Bagua diagram that we list our systems in, and there's more systems than there are pieces of the diagram. So there's some systems that either aren't taught to certain people or stuff like that. So I was learning stuff that was outside of the curriculum, like snake boxing, which is one that I really enjoy now, and things like Sick Fist, which is a subsystem off of our Drunken Boxing system, which was just hilarious to learn for various reasons. But I was learning all these obscure things while I was also helping teach, and it was a unique experience in that way. And I also got to meet my Kung Fu brother Tomer, who was the head of the Red Jade in Israel, and it was a very different vibe meeting with him, because he not only had our Ma family style and he loved his Drunken Boxing, but he also married into a family where I think it was his father that taught him the Wu style Tai Chi Chuan, and which is a system that's very rare by standards where I live, but I guess common where Israel stands. And he became kind of like the lineage holder. So getting to push hands with him was a whole nother game, because I learned Chen style and Yang style up to that point. I never experienced or even seen anyone practice Wu style in person. And so I got to learn a lot of his dirty tricks. Like, because like some of them are dirty tricks that are even like built around tournament push hands rules. Like some tournament push hands rules, you're not allowed to touch the legs. But one of this tricks was like you pull their arm down below by their leg, and then you kind of grab underneath it, and then you pull their leg through their arm. I don't know if I'm illustrating that very well, but it was funny. It was a way to touch the leg without touching the leg, sort of thing. I got to learn a lot of cool tricks from him. And yeah, then there was the UK. I got to spend some time in England, and that's where I got to meet James, and we lived with him for a while we taught him. And so we really got deep into the 18 Lohan Qigong, because that's what he really wanted to learn. And 18 Lohan Qigong is a very, very good system. Like, it's not just a Qigong, it's like a Qigong system. Like, you learn a whole curriculum of 18 Lohan, so to speak. But yeah, anyway, and it was another experience in and of itself, because James has a backyard that is it's a backyard, all right. It's a backyard of Kung Fu gardens. There's poles sticking out of the ground, and there's a makeshift wooden dummy, and all sorts of all sorts of like a not like official like brand products, but like I just cemented the stick into the ground so I could practice plucking and such like that. Just I had these things lying around and I found out ways to train with them. And so that was great. It was a real way to get into the tradition of it, because if you think about it, we have all these gear and stuff that's like specifically built for martial arts, but back in the day, it was just whatever they had lying around in their garage. So, they built their own things. So it's something to be said for that, right?
That's impressive. What does martial arts means to you beyond just self-defense or physical fitness?
Good question. So to me, it's fully a lifestyle. Mm-hmm. Like, because of like the philosophical backgrounds, right, where it was built around, because the martial arts weren't built in a vacuum. They were built around a culture. And in that culture, there was these philosophical systems like Taoism and Buddhism. And they were very much ingrained into everyday life, right? Even people who weren't like fully devout into their philosophical systems, they would still honor the traditions behind them. And it created a kind of mindset around it, where if you kind of understand where the culture and the philosophical aspects of all these things are, you kind of understand when they create these systems, where they're coming from. So if I go into a part of internal is learning to let go of the need to have power. Because if you're trying to have power, you're most likely tensing up your muscles, trying to feel your own force. But that's not the way to have power, because if you tense up your muscles, you're going to tense up antithesis muscles to what you're actually using. Like one of the common ones that I always talk about. If you're trying to punch straight out, you're trying to thrust, don't tense your bicep, because your bicep does retractions. So if you're tensing your bicep when you punch, well, you're pumping the brakes at the same time. So through internal, you learn to let go of all the unnecessary tensations and all the unnecessary crap that's holding you back. You learn to have proper structure, you learn to have proper efficiency. And the process of letting go is directly ripped out of Buddhism. Because in the Four Noble Truths, right, is in the world there is suffering. Then in order not to suffer, you have to learn to let go, right? There's a way to remove your suffering, and that's through letting go. And this letting go of attachments is really what it is. When you attach to something, or you're avert to something, if you have an aversion to something, you hate it, you want it away, it's another form of attachment, but in reverse. So if you have an attachment, it's something that you want. It's something that you want close to yourself, like a loved one, or a ring that belonged to someone that you really loved, right? The more that you attach to these things, the more you will hurt when something is brought between you and that thing. If you lose your ring, you're like, oh no, where is it? You're going to stress out about it. If your loved one dies, it's just like, oh, shit, right? I'm never going to see that person again. Or maybe it's your favorite slipper. It's like, man, I want that slipper back. It's been with me for way too long. It has way too many holes in it. And the more you attach, when that thing goes away, then you suffer. And then an aversion is reversed, right? If this thing is close to me, I'm suffering because it's close to me. Like that one neighbor that you just don't want to talk to you. It's like, please just stop talking. I want to go on my day. Or like very, very many other things, right? If those things are close to you, you're hurting, you're suffering. But if you can learn to let go, if you can learn to let go of your aversions, if you can let go of your attachments, that suffering that comes with it will, subside. It doesn't mean that you can't go without attachments throughout your whole life. As my my older Kung Fu brother, Jason, will always put it, because he was like big into the philosophical systems, and he's married with children. So someone asked him, so if you're big into not making attachments, how can you have a family? And he says, well, that's very simple. It's like signing a contract. I know that because I'm making these attachments, I will suffer. But I'm willing to make these attachments because I think that the suffering is worth the connection that it will bring. So it's not that you have to fully monk out and go like no attachments forever, but you just have to acknowledge that suffering will come as a result of those attachments and aversions. And then bringing it back to martial arts, right? The need to have power, that will bring its own suffering because you won't have power. Need to be speedy, right? Well, if your speed is not intellectually sound, right? If it's only speed for the sake of speed and not proper timing positioning, then your speed's worthless. It needs to be properly honed. It needs to be let go of. And when you let go of speed, you'll have speed. When you let go of power, you'll have power. But only if you focus your training in the right ways. Only if you continue to work the structure and continue to work the relaxation and continue to work the internal, that your power will come. But it's through the training, not through the desire to have power, if that makes sense.
Yeah, all those skills, they come as a consequence as your training goes, as your adaptability and your form of perception. When you growth, I have an internal growth through your martial arts and understanding the movements and the art itself. You had the opportunity to spar with many different styles. What was this encounters taught you about the effectiveness and the difference of into martial arts?
What it taught me is that we all are mostly the same. Not that there aren't small, unique differences, but we're all the same family, right? BJJ is not that much different from monkey boxing. Boxing is not that different from Shinaleha. They have their stylistic differences, but we're all people. And as martial arts is built for people to fight people. And you can only really fight people so many ways, right? There's ground boxing, there's stand-up boxing, there's wrestling, there's locking, there's all sorts of things. But at the end of the day, we're still limited by the fact that we are people. We have skin, we have bones, we stand up on two legs. Sometimes we go down on all fours with ground boxing, but we all have that same root. So I've sparred with people, mostly of Chinese martial arts, because that's kind of the scene that I'm involved in more. But I have fought with people with BJJ experience. I have fought people with boxing experience, with MMA experience, and with all sorts of different experiences. And through my teaching, I've also had students come in with different various experiences as well. It's really just who's the better fighter. Doesn't matter what style you are, right? If you train fighting, you'll get good at fighting. If you train just for health, you won't probably be a great fighter, but at least you'll be healthy. It's just like what you train is what you become. So if you train Chinese martial arts and you train for fighting's sake, you'll probably be as good a fighter as the MMA guys, so long as you're actually sparring and doing the work. And if you're an MMA guy and you're just doing the punches, but you're not actually sparring and fighting, you'll get good fitness, but you probably won't. You probably get spanked in the ring. It's just what you train is what you become. But we're all people. We have different views of the world, but we're all viewing the same world, if that makes sense. It's like every style is like a different way to climb a mountain. We all climb in different pathways. Some of us circle up the mountain like this, like Baguazhang. Some of us dart back and forth, like usually on zigzags, because if you walk directly up a mountain, you'll get tired if you ever walked up a mountain before. But even just going up the path, there will be crisscrosses between different styles. And so you say, oh, hey, you do this thing also? Cool. That's awesome. We share this. Oh, you do this too? Great. And then when you climb up to the top of the mountain, you're all in the same place and you wonder, like, we could train different styles. Why are you here too? Well, maybe the mountain was not just a style, but the core of martial arts, right? The styles are pathways that go up the mountain, but then you get the skills that you were looking for, or the skills that you were training for. So it's all just, it all kind of ends up at the same place if you just keep going. And of course, there's ways that you can stunt your growth, like get a black belt and then you get a big ego and you're like, oh, I can beat up anybody I want. And then you just kind of stay there forever because you stop learning, right? And then they just stay at their spot on part way up the mountain and they never go any further and they never realize that they're on the same mountain as everybody else because their ego got in the way. So it's very much taught me that we're all born from the same mother martial arts.
Yeah, so there's always a path that connects techniques, that connects different philosophy. I mean, philosophies that also sometimes seems to be differently, but they have the same meaning as well. Many traditional martial arts is struggling to stay relevant into modern era. How do you think we can keep these arts alive, especially those traditions, and applying to a new generation, appealing to a new generation?
There's a lot of ways I can go with this. I'll try to get as many as possible. One, we do need to get over the fact that everything's online now. If we're going to, at the very least, get attention, we do need to have a presence online because that is where everybody is going nowadays, especially the younger kids. And if we don't do that, we're not appealing to the age demographic. And I teach online. I've learned online before. It's useful. It's not a replacement for in-person teaching, but we do have to understand that at some point, right, people who want to learn from us are going to be many miles away, right, continents away, or they might not even have martial arts around them at all, and this would be their first taste. And maybe after having that taste, they'll be like, okay, I want to see more, and then they'll go travel and find someone. It may not be you, but it might be another traditional martial artist. So I think we have to get past the barrier of, I know we've got to keep tradition, but we also have to adapt to the market, so to speak. Another way, we also have to appeal to the different age demographics of what they're coming to martial arts for. If they're coming for health, promote the health aspect. If they're coming to get fit, promote the fitness aspect. If they're coming for the traditions and the philosophical aspects, promote that aspect. If they're coming for fighting, promote that aspect. And the way that we can do this is through both being real about it, right? If we're going to promote the martial arts aspect, we should be good at fighting ourselves. A lot of traditional martial arts, at least some of the ones that are not successful in this way, they promote it as a martial art, but then they can't fight. And then people are like, well, if you can't fight, then why am I here? I'll just go to the MMA gym because they can fight. So it's like you gotta promote well. You have to realize that people are coming to martial arts for different reasons, and we have to be truly authentic ourselves in our own practice. I think that's the best way that I could answer that. There's probably things I'm missing because I'm not perfect. But
No, yeah. One thing as well. How do you envision the future of martial arts with the technology that we have now? You see that through the last past years, especially after COVID, the online teaching has been a good thing, and I think was very well developed for especially people that have different locations and want to learn different systems, and unfortunately, it's not available in close range or to their neighborhood or city. So, how do you think is going to be the adaptation or adaptability from the martial arts continue from now on with the technology that we are having right now? Do you think it's something that's going to be more and more improving? Do you think we're going to see less people getting into martial arts? How do you expect that?
I think it will go both ways because, I mean, martial arts, especially nowadays, is not popular because of the nature of the practice. Today is very much I want to press a button and get my satisfaction kind of attitude, and martial arts is not going to give that to you. It will never give that to you. It will make you bleed, sweat, and cry for even the smallest amount of improvement. And I don't mean to say that as like you shouldn't do this, but it takes hard work to get improvement, and it's this side of this side of society that I think a lot of people are lacking, and some people are even craving because they're so ingrained in this culture of like, I press things and I get instant satisfaction, but that satisfaction wanes over time. Much like if you take a medicine every day, eventually that medicine, your body might adjust to it and it might not work as well. So some people will eventually flip over and be like, I want something that's more substantial. And that's something that martial arts can give, because it's not that instant gratification. It's, you plant the seed and you water it and you nurture it, you let it grow, and it will grow in its time. It won't be growing in your time, it will be growing in its own time. So I think we have to understand that first. And then as far as like online training goes and in that direction, I think the way that my teacher has it going is pretty good. Is a lot of his online students are people that he'll go and travel to and have travel to him every now and then. So it's not just your online student purely, but it's like, okay, you train online, and then the next time we meet up, I'm going to make sure you have those things, right? Mm-hmm. I'm going to make sure that you have now the hands-on touch experience, and then for the next several months that you're training alone, you'll have that experience to influence your practice, which will probably be a longer cultivation time than just being in person, living with the teacher, because that's in-person training, right? Is the best thing that you can get. But for people who don't have that option, it might be their only option. And we have to consider that, because not everybody has the teacher nearby, or not everybody has the money to go live somewhere else and learn from this person and then go somewhere else and live from that person. Maybe they only have the money to do the online classes and only every now and then go and fly out to see you. So we need to keep that in mind and really be involved in the training, not just throwing out your videos and that's that, but try and involve yourself. Like, take your time and make seminars, go fly out by their area so you can hang out with them, say, okay, we're going to download as much Kung Fu into you as possible during this short time, which is really what happened during full time for me. Is we had months at a time where we just hyperbolic time chambered it and just downloaded as much as possible. Luckily for me, I was a machine for learning forms and shapes, so that part was no problem. It was just putting oil in the machine, and we just did it up. So yeah, I think we do need to move towards that direction, right? Just not only embracing the online culture, but also making it personal, if that makes sense.
Exactly. Yeah, we see that through the years, things are changing. You know, back in the days, were just books, then came VHSs, and then DVDs, and now we have the ability to learn and to teach through online courses. Very good instructors are out there, such as you and your Sifu New, which was a great honor of meeting him and having him in this show and having you as well. Yeah, so I believe that there will be a lot of opportunities and many things coming up, especially with the AI kind of thing, booming. So I think many tools are coming up to help the martial arts society. So Sifu Hajif, I really want to thank you for this opportunity. Thank you so much for being part of this show. I want to leave this few minutes so you can promote yourself, your school, your online courses, and of course your books. And yeah, feel free to share and how people find you as well. Even though those links are going to be in the description of this video, but for the people that are listening to us through the Spotify, just feel free.
So first of all, thank you very much for having me on the show. I'm very honored. I'm always pleased to talk Kung Fu with another fellow brethren. So thank you very much for having me. Now, to find me, I have a website where you can find everything. It has it's kind of like a hub for all of my different things, for my online classes, for my books, for my martial arts blog, everything. You've got access to everything there. So my website is redjade-san.webnode.com. And that from there, you can look up my bio, you can look up everything. I also have a YouTube channel, Red Jade Martial Arts of McHenry. That's where I have a lot of videos like the martial poetry series, where I go through videos of different movements. I talk about the names of the movements and the poetry of it and what the poetry is trying to teach about the movement. I also have several series, like one that's coming out new is called Hand as Sword. It's basically taking sword movements and then translate it to empty hand applications. I also have a 3D functional strength series, which is taking movements from different martial arts and using them as a general functional strength kind of training set for people who don't have necessarily a gym in their living room. So it doesn't require any lifting or anything like that, just body weight practices. So I've got a lot of stuff there. I've got my books on Lulu. I have one on Drunken Boxing. I have one on monkey boxing. I have one on long fist, Xingyi Chuan, and I have a book on philosophy. And I'm writing a book currently about Tai Chi Chuan, but it will take me a while to get there because it's a really big book so far. So please be patient with that. And I have a blog. There's so much of my writings there, just all cataloged there on my WordPress. So yeah, of course, all those links will be in the description, all that. Get that out to you all you guys as well. And I have sweatshirts if anybody wants to buy the sweatshirts.
Oh, nice.
Shameless plugs here.
That's nice. Yes, everything is going to be in the description of this video. Thank you so much for your time, Sifu. I'm sure, for the next maybe seasons, we're going to be chatting again, maybe bringing you again for, get deep into my family, into the drunken boxing as well, and sharing some knowledge. Thank you so much for your time. And thank you guys for watching the show, for making it happen. Thank you for everything. And then hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.